So I have been involved in the world of wild animals since I was a small child. And in particular, I've worked for the Three Owls Bird Sanctuary in the UK since I was 13 years old. And so that's more than 50 years of work understanding wildlife and ecology. And in fact, I'm now the senior trustee of the Three Owls Bird Sanctuary. And people leave us money and we buy land and then look at how can we increase the biodiversity in that land? How can we have more birds and mice and all the rest of it? And I want to tell you about a 2-acre field of leeks because it gets to the heart of some of this vegetarian versus carnivore thing. There was a field of leeks, and it had grown leeks for many years. It was a monoculture of leeks. And in that field, nothing lived other than leeks because they sprayed it twice a year with a herbicide, once a year with a pesticide. So that produced a lot of leeks and nothing else. And then that field has become one of the, I think it's 6 reserves I manage now. And after 7 years, there are now 20 species of bird and 135 species of moth and 3 species of bat, and so on and so forth, living on that 2 acres of land. So one of the things I would say, if you're looking at land and you're worrying about animals, is we should be thinking about not just the 2 or 3 sheep you might kill and eat if they lived on the 2 acres of land, but what about, if you grow leeks, what about all the animals that never get to exist? So on that 2 acres of land now, there are barn owls hunting the mice at night and kestrels during the day, and then herons come in, eat it. How many mice are on there? There must be thousands, but nobody ever talks about, you see, they talk about the sheep you murder and eat. But what about if you have a monoculture? What about all the animals whose existence you deny the opportunity of them ever existing? Because the monocultures are, in my opinion, a worry. And so I think when we're looking at the food supply, we should be looking what is the best use of each acre of land? A lot of England is not suited to crops at all because it's just too wet. Most of Wales and the Lake District really can produce lamb, but it can't produce wheat or oats or anything else. And then on top of that, we should be considering what's the load of pesticide, herbicide, fertilizer that each acre requires, and that should be costed in. Or in California, the water you're using needs costing in. And if you did that and you thought about each acre of land and you thought about carbon sequestration in the soil and you looked at what was happening with the soil and you factored in the herbicide, pesticide and the biodiversity, some aspects of regenerative agriculture start looking very, very interesting. And I want to give you an example of some regenerative agriculture I've done myself, because I do actually worry, about the animals that I eat and the planet. And, people often think that maybe I don't care, but I actually I've cared since I've been a child. I wouldn't have run all these bird reserves if I didn't care about wildlife. But this, back to the experiment. So another one of my reserves, this was a larger reserve, and we had about 3,000 trees in there, and a few orchids were growing. And then as an experiment, I introduced sheep over the winter. And we found that since I've introduced the sheep, within 2 to 3 years, the number of orchids have quadrupled, or in fact, this year I couldn't count them. We started off and there was like 5 orchids, but this year it wasn't possible to count them. And it's because the sheep eat out all the undergrowth and disturb the ground, and then the orchids can grow. So here we're producing lamb, we're producing wildflowers, birds of prey, and I don't know what else, and all these orchids. And that got me really interested in regenerative agriculture. Is the way that we produce food, whatever we're eating, is it sustainable? And I think we all need to think far more about that. And I know there are people in America think a great deal about it. At heart is something about the soil and how you care for your soil. So I just wanted to share that with people, really, this idea that it is possible to eat meat and it be good for the planet, but it does depend on where you source it. And is it grass-fed? How was it produced? And this is why, Shawn, we produce so much of our own meat here on our farm to eat. That's why I have sheep, because I know where I can go and look at where my meat's coming from. It's grazing out there now, all the geese and so on. Each of us has a responsibility to show quite a lot of interest in this. At the moment, there's massive subsidies for the corn crop and the sugar crop. What if there were those same subsidies for the production of regenerative foods, regenerative agriculture? It's the end of my little lecture.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all, David. And like I said, I in fact, I have a rancher coming to my house tomorrow. He's going to bring me some meat and we're going to have a podcast. But this is, a topic that, I've touched on many, many times. I've talked to a whole bunch of regenerative ranchers of different things. And I think clearly that is going to be part of the solution going forward. It has to be, and the fact that the really interesting thing is, you can increase the stocking rates. And so you can actually graze more animals than you could in a conventional system. And then if you can, over time, you can, the argument is, can you make it even more productive than what we currently have? And that's a contentious argument. I think, certainly you can approach that. And I think we can certainly, if our goal is to improve the environment, whether or not it's changing greenhouse gases to the degree that affects climate change or not, it does make sense to improve the biodiversity and enrich the soil and bring the animals and the bees and the birds. And right now with the massive pesticide and herbicide usage in the monocrops, you just decimate everything. You kill even all the insects. And, Stephen, who's in here, we talk about, when you kill all the insects, guess what else dies? Well, all the birds dies and all the lizards, all the things that depend on those insects start to die. And then all of a sudden you have this, this basically, bleak, sort of degraded land that is good for almost nothing.
Yes, you have silent countryside. Yeah. And as somebody that runs bird sanctuaries, well, where have all the birds gone? Well, there's nothing for them to eat. That's why. So if there are no flowers, then there are no seeds. And if there are no flowers, there are hardly any insects. And then people go on about, these birds are endangered and those birds are endangered. Well, no wonder they're all starving to death. One of the interesting facts, Shawn, is that grass that is grazed intermittently is more vigorous and produces more volume of grass. This is the basis for mob grazing. And I'm fascinated by these ranchers who can produce more meat per acre or hectare done in a regenerative way. They can double the stocking rates. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. And then if they run multi-species behind it, they can even further improve the land capacity. So